The Cabal of Tsakata, Episode 1. Mayar 11th, 513. This is the first entry in my field journal for my excursion to the country of Naquer. My name is Francisco Diaz, and I'm an aspiring archaeologist. This field journal will be a written account of what I experience in the country as I try to help unravel the mysteries that surround the Cabal of Tsakata. The Cabal of Tsakata was a religious cult that existed in the ancient kingdom of Adam and was often the source of significant grief for the dominant religion of the kingdom, the Order of Tagun. I have come to modern-day Naquer, which was once ancient Adam, to join the archaeological expedition led by Dr. Reaver. My specialty and the focus of my own doctoral program is storytelling through ancient art. I'm studying at Tom Bryan University, although I'm aware that Dr. Reaver is a professor at a rival school, Varisco University. This will be my first real-world experience on an archaeological expedition, as well as leaving my home country of Ocean Dare. I'm quite excited and apprehensive at the same time. Should I die unexpectedly, please return this field journal to my home university and have them forward it to my family. I'm certain that my little sister Isabella Diaz will be interested to read about what adventures may lay in store for me. Now that we have addressed the grim sort of talk, we can move on to more pleasant thoughts. I have just departed the Oceanarian port of Caltanks, and we should be sailing across the Fontanis Sea to the country of Naquer. According to the captain of the vessel, we should reach the port city of Tahandra in about 4 days. Tahandra will be my first introduction to the exotic country of Naquer. Naquer is a partially desert nation that is only about 500 years old. And prior to its creation, the land was a hostile battlefield to various lords and ladies, all trying to claim dominion. Thousands of years ago, there used to be a powerful and conservative country called Adam. At its height, it was one of the major ancient superpowers, standing with the other major superpower countries, like ancient Karen and ancient Inonok. While modern-day Naquer is still a fairly conservative government, it has great appreciation to the ancient past of their forebearers. They welcome expeditions so long as other nations agree to keep their relics, artifacts, and such things inside the country. I have always loved art and how ancient civilizations used art to show different things about their cultures and legends. While taking an ancient art class at university, I was exposed to some of the beautiful reliefs and murals left by the ancient Adamite people. Recently, I was approached by one of my professors, Dr. Glenn Kuko, about an opportunity with one of his colleagues. It sounded like an amazing experience, and so after considerable thought, I decided to pursue the opportunity. Mayar 16th, 513. A terrible storm was on the Fontanis Sea, and so it delayed our trip by a day and a half. The sun is setting against the land, and the city of Tahandra is bathed in a magical orange light. The longer I stare at it, the greater my excitement grows. I'll jot more down once I settle into my lodgings for the night. So I settled into my room at a nice little inn. The inn is called the Spice Apple Inn, and the short Naquerian man who helped me was very pleasant. The Naquerian people all have deep brown skin, baked by the constant sun. Most of the people I've seen have black or brown eyebrows, and either brown or gray eyes. Many of the men have well-groomed but large beards. Interestingly, everyone wears hoods or scarves over their heads, concealing all but their faces. As I stepped off of the ship, I noticed how some of the Naquerians gaped at me in surprise. Some people gazed at me with eager and perhaps aroused expressions, while others beamed offended glares. While I do have a darker skin tone than those from places like Skendar, I'm not as dark as the Naquerians. Perhaps I should consider getting several of the headscarves for myself, as to be respectful to the country and its people. I'm sure I could purchase them from one of the local vendors. Most Naquerians are followers of modern Tagoon, and the Tagoonite faith says that hair is only meant to be viewed by family, friends, and loved ones. The kind innkeeper also told me where I could purchase the services of a local guide who can take me to the city of Bubesh, a larger city several days away. I'm supposed to meet my contact in Bubesh in a week's time, so it's good that I arrived in the country early. For the most part, the Naquerians are kind, and I don't feel quite out of place. I sketched some of the people I saw today. In addition to being a scholar, I'm a fairly talented artist as well. I'll rest tonight and start to travel tomorrow. Mayar 17th, 5:13. I started my journey to Bubesh today. When I got up, I paid for my room, and then I went to the bazaar to find someone who would sell me headscarves. It didn't take long for me to find a suitable vendor, and I bought 5 headscarves in the following colors: pink, dark purple, red, blue, and bright green. The vendor had to show me 4 times how to wrap it around my head, but by the 5th time, I managed to pick it up. While my bright colors still caught people's eyes, at least I wasn't being indecent anymore. By the mid-morning, I had secured the services of an approachable guide, an older woman named Tarish. We left Tahandra, and we should reach Bubesh by the evening on the 2nd day. During my travel, I got to see the rolling desert plains and distant dunes of sand. There was a quiet beauty radiating from the barrenness of this country. It seems the sky is so much wider here than back in Ocean Dare. My guide is grandmotherly, and she listens to my questions and chatter. She hasn't really told me anything about herself, but that's okay. She mentioned that we needed to be wary of marauders, who are said to be terrorizing routes near Bubesh. When night fell, we stopped traveling. As I'm writing this, I'm existing beneath the legion of stars I have sketched in one of my books. The number is completely humbling, and they are far more majestic than any time I've viewed them back home. For this sight alone, I am grateful for this experience. When I asked if Tarish had ever heard of the Cabal of Tsakata, she told me she had not. To be frank, Tarish does not concern herself over the past. She only cares about eating daily, staying hydrated, and living to the next day. Mayar 18th, 5:13. Nothing to report today. Just lots of empty land, and the occasional sighting of a distant traveler, going somewhere. I can't wait to get to Bubesh. Also, Tarish showed me how to veil my face as to not get sunburned. Mayar 19th, 5:13. We managed to get to the massive city of Bubesh after the city already closed its gates. So tonight, Tarish and I will be spending the night outside. Bubesh is fairly large, and it reminds me of the many cities back in my home country. There are several tall spires that rise above the city walls. Bubesh appears to be well guarded, and I wonder how safe the surrounding area is. However, I can't stress about it now. I will either see the morning, or I won't. Mayar 20th, 5:13. Once the city opened up, Tarish and I went inside. She bid me farewell, and I started to walk the city. Even early in the morning, the streets of Bubesh were packed with people. All of them wore headscarves, and many of them wore veils across their faces as well. I managed to secure a room at another inn, a place called the Evening Star Inn. I still have to wait 3 more days or so before I can meet my contact, and we are supposed to meet at the Naquer National Museum. I plan to go to the museum tomorrow to see what sort of objects are stored there. I also realize that I am very fortunate that I was not robbed while navigating through the streets. Here is for hoping that my luck continues. The Evening Star Inn was run by a very well-fed man named Fadir. He provided me with a traditional Naquerian meal of grilled fish, regional vegetables, and a delicious paste called hummus. He asked me what I was doing in Bubesh, and I told him that I am here to join the archaeological expedition related to the excavation of the Temple of Tsakata. Unlike Tarish, Fadir knew about Tsakata, and he had quite a number of opinions related to the goddess. He said Tsakata was a mythological demon who corrupted men and women into becoming slaves to debauchery. He wished me Tagun's protection as I enter that unholy place. I will admit, I don't know much about who Tsakata is, other than what's listed in the papers published by Dr. Reaver. According to her research, Tsakata was a 4-armed goddess who embodied sexual freedom and exploration, fertility, luck, misfortune, and magic. Dr. Reaver indicated that the Order of Tagun had a negative view on Tsakata, but I didn't know that people saw her as a corrupting demon of debauchery. I wonder if the museum has any of her recovered artifacts. I am so excited about seeing the museum tomorrow. May 21st, 5:13. This morning I walked over to the Naquer National Museum. I wasn't sure what I would find or how extensive the museum would be, but I had high anticipations. I walked into the front and was greeted by a dour security guard. However, he seemed to get a little nicer once I explained that I was going to be working with Dr. Reaver in the future. I was allowed to wander alone, although there were security guards patrolling the premises. Most of the exhibits were related to the ancient kingdom of Saushiadam. There were ancient tools, slabs of artwork, and old weapons on display. I sketched what I saw. One particular art piece seemed interesting, as it showed a warrior of Tagun slaying a demonic 4-armed monster. The demon woman was ample of chest, and her breasts were bare. The monster was on her back, and she stared at the warrior with bulging eyes, a mouth full of sharp teeth, and a long tongue. 2 of its hands were caressing the warrior's legs, perhaps trying to coax the man into sex. The other 2 hands fondled its heaving breasts. Most notable was the very long penis between the monster's hairy legs. The penis had a demonic face at its tip, with its own little flicking tongue. The Saushiadamite man, who wore a headscarf, had a disgusted facial expression, and he plunged his spear into the monster's heart. The image was quite offensive, especially in such a conservative society. Other patrons averted their eyes from the mural I looked at, as if they were trying to avoid being corrupted. As this was related to my doctoral interests, I sketched the art piece. Most of the other art pieces and artifacts glorified Tagun and were absent of any references to Tsakata. However, the Tsakata exhibits were at the back of the museum. I was enthralled by what I found within. A small plaque at the entrance of the exhibit specified that all of the artifacts were related to the excavation of the Temple of Tsakata at Ornak. This is the site where I'm supposed to help Dr. Reaver. I moved inside the exhibit, curious to see what might be waiting for me. The first objects I saw were ancient pleasure pillows that were used during ancient orgies. There were also ritualistic rods with phallic and vaginal symbols on them. Ancient robes worn by the clerics of the order were on display. There was even an intricate headdress for a head priest as well. I was sketching one of the artifacts when someone approached me. I'll admit, I jumped when they looked over my shoulder. To my surprise, a beautiful woman with light gray eyes gazed upon my work with piqued interest. She had an oval face, a pair of well-trimmed black eyebrows, and a coy smile on her lips. She wore a light purple headscarf and some light purple robes. The woman apologized and grinned at me when I in turn apologized for jumping. She introduced herself as Samira Hajar, and she was employed by the museum as a liaison for acquisitions. She asked me about my interest in the Tsakata collection, and I introduced myself. When I told her that I was going to be joining the archaeological expedition team at Ornac, she visually lit up. Samira said that Dr. Reaver was a beloved patron of the museum, and that she had donated many of the Tugunite artifacts on display. For the rest of the exhibit, Samira walked with me and explained to me the significance of the art. She also referenced what I had already sketched in my sketchbook. She mentioned that the various temples that used to be across ancient Saoshi-Adam had chambers dedicated to ritualistic orgies, where attendees would play with one another on massive pleasure pillows. The purpose of such extravagant events was for the participants to have spiritual experiences, or perhaps to reach higher levels of thinking through orgasms. Samira explained that according to the texts, the clerics of Tsakata would give the attendees potions to enhance pleasure and allow the mind to transcend to a different plane of existence. Samira pointed to my drawing of the rods with the phallic and vaginal symbols and explained that they were used in magical rituals to heal those who had afflictions like impotence, infertility, and other such hindrances to sexual health. She also told me that the Tsakata orgies were highly coveted events because it was said that the attendees would be blessed with greater luck in life as well. Samira and I came to an artistic drawing of the goddess Tsakata. The imagery implemented in this artist's style had such a stark contrast than the other image of the goddess I had seen earlier. This image of Tsakata was presented as a beautiful four-armed goddess with a pleasant face, a set of caring eyes, and a comforting smile. Unlike the previous image, this version of the taboo goddess was not naked. She wore a covering over her breasts, and she had a loincloth covering her waist. Tsakata held 4 items, one in each hand. In one hand, she held out a phallic staff, outstretched as if to heal someone. In another hand, she cradled a baby to her exposed stomach. The baby appeared quite content and fast asleep. In a third hand, she held a bloody sword raised above her head. The last hand had the decapitated head of a cruel-looking man. At the base of Tsakata's feet were humans engaged in various sexual acts. I asked Samira about the context, and also revealed I didn't know much about the Cabal of Tsakata. Samira told me that those who follow Tsakata were blessed with divine permission to pursue sexual freedom and identity, have increased fertility, self-love, and pleasure. In addition to that, Tsakata was also a goddess of luck, misfortune, and magic. To the conservative order of Tagun, Tsakata was a perversion deity, and she detracted from their high moral code of temperance, purity, and other such virtues. In ancient Saoshi-Adam, the open worship and glorification of Tsakata was against the laws, and her temples were not allowed in the cities. In fact, if her temples were known by the king of Saoshi-Adam, then they would be attacked and the clerics would be put to death. That's why there were so few known temples, and why the orgies of Tsakata were so exciting. They were a part of the seedy and shadowy Saoshi-Adamite counterculture, where the often sexually repressed citizens could have the freedom to be who they wanted to be. Tsakata is holding the staff because she advocated for the healing of those afflicted with sexual misfortune. She is holding the baby because Tsakata was a caring goddess who wanted babies to be born. Tsakata holds the sword because she is also fierce and will defend her followers against their enemies. She holds the decapitated head because she stands in opposition against the Order of Tagun. Samira explained that Tsakata was a hermaphrodite and had both genitals. There were other depictions of clerics of Tsakata blessing people, greeting people at the temple entrances, and even a painting of the orgies. My face was flustered because of how graphic all the images were. Samira giggled and said that my reaction was perfectly normal, as many Naquerians also ogled the ancient and taboo goddess. While modern Naquer isn't as strict as ancient Saushiadam, Tsakata is still scandalously exciting in this day and age. Samira asked me when I was meeting with my contact, and I told her I still had several days to wait. She asked me if I wanted to have dinner with her tomorrow, and we could discuss more about modern-day Naquer, and she could show me around Bubesh. I eagerly accepted, and we parted ways when I left the museum. I managed to sketch the other art pieces that Samira and I had seen, and I spent much of the afternoon looking at the art, trying to wrap my head around who this Tsakata was. I will admit, I'm more than a bit intrigued. Mayar 22nd, 5:13. So I had dinner with Samira. She's a warm individual, and she took the time to help me better understand Naquerian culture. She praised my insight in wearing the headscarves, as it is not only respectful to the religion and the culture of the people, but it allowed me to blend in with the people, even considering my bright colors. Had I not worn a headscarf or veil, I would not only be sunburned to the extreme, but I would have been the target of thievery from pickpockets. For dinner we had some delicious lamb, vegetables, and some spiced wine. We walked around the city after that, and she showed me where I would be able to get supplies, as Dr. Reaver sent some of her team every week to get provisions. Provisions like water, food, etc. Samira showed me where the Temple of Tagun was, and we had a great conversation about the conservative nature of most Naquerians. While many people didn't know about Tsakata, those who did treated her as a demon adversary of their god Tagun. Samira showed me where the most dangerous areas of Bubesh were, and strongly advised me to avoid them. We parted ways at the museum, and she expressed interest in seeing what else we would uncover related to Tsakata. I am fortunate to have made a friend in Bubesh, and one that works for the museum no less. This is going to be very exciting. I can't wait to meet the rest of my contacts. Mayar 23rd, 5:13. I met my contacts today. 4 men with a large wagon. The first was an Naquerian man named Hamal al-Nasr. Hamal introduced himself as the head of Dr. Reaver's security forces, and someone whose orders I had to follow if I wanted to survive. Hamal is a tall fellow with a well-toned body, a large nose, and a pair of brown, hawk-like eyes. He also carried a wicked axe at his side. He's wearing a black headscarf, black robes, and armor. 2 of the other men were dressed similarly, and they didn't even look at me. Instead, they watched the crowd. The last individual was a man whose skin was so dark, he looked like a spot of night. He had a dark red headscarf over his head, a pair of brown eyes, and a hard-looking scowl. When the man looked at me, I immediately felt as if I had committed some great offense to him. He introduced himself to me as Obasi Obe, but said nothing else of himself. He wasn't dressed like the other security guards. For most of the day, we gathered supplies for the excavation site, and we will leave tomorrow. Tomorrow, my real adventure begins. And soon after that, I will see my very first archaeological ruin.